Savior, for yet another time of Sabbath rest. We do celebrate, commemorate, and we do esteem the hour for yet another opportunity to commemorate and celebrate a time of rest that He's given unto all of Yahshua to show forth the covenant that He has between us and Himself. We're going to begin with the Baruch of the Torah. Repeat with me. Baruch Yahuwah.
Baruch Yahuwah.
The Baruch one.
The Baruch one.
Baruch is Yahuwah.
Baruch is Yahuwah.
The Baruch one.
The Baruch one.
For all eternity.
For all eternity.
Baruch atah.
Baruch atah.
Yahuwah.
Yahuwah.
Our supreme one.
Our supreme one.
King of the universe.
King of the universe.
Who selected us from all the peoples.
Who selected us from all the peoples.
And gave us His Torah.
And gave us His Torah.
Baruch atah.
Baruch atah.
Yahuwah.
Yahuwah.
Giver of the Torah.
Giver of the Torah.
And it is so.
And it is so.
Baruch atah.
Baruch atah.
Yahuwah.
Yahuwah.
Our supreme one.
Our supreme.
King of the universe.
King of the universe.
Who gave us the Torah of truth.
Who gave us the Torah.
Planted eternal life within us.
And planted eternal life within us.
Baruch atah.
Baruch atah.
Yahuwah.
Yahuwah.
Giver of the Torah.
Giver of the Torah.
And it is so.
And it is so.
And it is so.
And it is so.
Now we'll have the reading of the Ten Commandments done by Mattathias.
Devarim 5:6-22. Aleph. I am Yahuwah your power, which brought you out of the land of Mitzrayim from the bank of slavery. They, you shall have no other power for me. You shall not make you any graven image or any likeness of anything that is in Shemayim above, or that is in the earth beneath, or that is in the mind beneath the earth. You shall not bow down yourself unto them, nor serve them, for I, Yahuwah your power, am a jealous power, visiting the iniquity of the hours upon the children, unto the third and fourth generation of them that hate me, and showing mercy unto thousands of them that are hot me and keep my commandments. Gimel, you shall not take the name of Yahuwah your power and falsify it, for Yahuwah will not hold him guiltless that takes his name and empties it. Dalet, guard the Sabbath day to set it apart, as Yahuwah your power has commanded you. 6 days you shall labor and do all your work, but the seventh day is the Sabbath of Yahuwah your power. In it you shall not do work, you, nor your son, nor your daughter, nor your manservant, nor your maidservant, nor your ox, nor your ass, nor any of your cattle, nor your foreigner that is within your gates, that your manservant and your maidservant may rest as well as you. And remember that you were a servant in the land of Mitzrayim, and that Yahuwah your power brought you out of there through a mighty hand, and which Yahuwah your power has commanded you, that your days may be prolonged, and that it may go well with you in the land which Yahuwah your power is about to give you. Why? You shall not murder. Zain, neither shall you commit adultery. Ket, neither shall you steal. Tet, neither shall you bear false witness against your neighbor. Neither shall you desire your neighbor's issue, neither shall you covet your neighbor's bed, his field, or his manservant, or his maidservant, his ox, or his ass, or anything that is your neighbor's. These words Yahuwah spoke unto all your assembly in the mount, out of the midst of the fire, of the cloud, and of the thick darkness with a great voice. And he added no more. And he wrote them in 2 tables of stone and delivered them unto me. And it is so.
And it is so. Chapter 6, verses 1 through 18, and it reads, These are the commands, enter and possess it, that you might fear Yahuwah your power, and that your young men may be prolonged. Hear therefore, O Yasharal, and observe to do it, that it may be well with you, and that you may increase mightily as Yahuwah power of your Abbas has promised you in the land that flows with milk and honey. Shema Yasharal. Hear, O Yasharal, Yahuwah our supreme one, Yahuwah is Akkad. And you shall ahab Yahuwah your supreme one with all your heart, and with all your soul, and with all your might. And these words which I command you this yom shall be in your heart. And you shall teach them diligently unto your children, and shall talk of them when you sit in your bed, and when you walk by the way, and when you lie down, and when you rise up. And you shall bind them for a sign upon your hand, and they shall be as frontlets between your eyes. To fall to what?
To bind to the mind.
To bind to the mind. And you shall write them upon the posts of your bed and on your gates. And it shall be when Yahuwah your power shall have brought you into the land which he swore to your fathers, to Abraham, to Isaac, and to Yaakov, to give you great cities which you did not build, houses full of all great things that you filled not, and wells dug which you did not dig, vineyards and olive trees which you did not plant. When you shall have eaten and be full, then beware lest you forget Yahuwah which brought you forth out of the land of Mitzrayim, from the bed of slavery. You shall fear Yahuwah your power and serve him, and shall swear by his name. You shall not go after the power of the people which are round about you. For Yahuwah your power is a jealous power among you. And lest Yahuwah your powers you tempted him in Massa. You shall diligently keep the commandments of Yahuwah your power, and his testimonies, and his statutes which he has commanded you. And you shall do that which is right in the sight of Yahuwah, that it may be well with you, and that you may go in and possess the great land which Abba Yahuwah is unto your Abbas. And it is so.
And it is so.
Let's have this.
It was the best thing I ever done. I have Yahuwah. I have It was the best thing I ever done. Oh, I have It was the best thing I ever done. Oh, in your arms, I feel protected. In your arms,
connected in your arms. I feel protected, and there is no place I'd rather be. Oh, in your arms, I feel protected. In your arms, I feel connected. In your arms, I feel protected. There is no place I'd rather be. Oh, it was the best thing I ever done. Oh, it was the best thing I ever done. Oh, in your arms, I feel protected. In your arms, I feel connected. In your arms, I feel protected. There is no place I'd rather be. Oh, in your arms, I feel protected. In your arms, I feel connected. In your arms, I feel protected. And there is no place I'd rather be. Oh, is, this is the day that the Abba has made, and we shall rejoice and be thankful. And for all that He's done, all that He's doing, and all that He's yet going to do, at this time, we're going to turn our attention to the writings of Yahush, the son of Nun, chapter 1. And we're going to read verses 6, 7, and we're going to recite verse 8 together. And it reads, "Be strong and of a great courage, for to this people shall you divide for an inheritance the land, which I swore to their Abbas to give them. Only be you strong and very courageous, that you may observe to do according to all the Torah, which Moshe my servant commanded you. Turn not from it to the right hand or to the left, that you may prosper wherever you go." Verse 8, as I've tailored to fit our time of confession. Repeat with me. "I will not let this scroll of the Torah
I will not let the scroll of the Torah
depart out of my mouth,
depart out of my mouth.
but I shall meditate
I shall meditate therein,
Yom and Layla,
Yom and Layla,
that I may observe to do
that I may observe to do
according to all that is written in it.
according to all that is written in it.
For then I shall make my way prosperous,
And then I shall make my way prosperous,
and then I shall act wisely."
and then I shall act wisely.
Now look at your neighbor, tell your neighbor, "You shall act wisely,
And you shall act wisely.
Look at your other neighbor, tell your other neighbor, "You shall act wisely, and you shall act wisely." Take your hand and place it over your heart and say, "Abba Yahuwah,
Abba Yahuwah,
I shall act wisely."
I shall act wisely.
Come on, Abba Yahuwah,
Abba Yahuwah,
I shall act wisely.
I shall act wisely.
Come on, Abba Yahuwah,
Abba Yahuwah,
I shall act wisely.
I endeavor
To act wisely.
to act wisely.
I endeavor
I endeavor
to act wisely.
to act wisely.
Come on, I endeavor
I endeavor
to act wisely.
to act wisely.
And it is so.
And it is so.
And it is so very important that we act wisely, regardless of what situation we find ourselves in. Let us have one more song, please. Baruch Yahuwah, oh, and all that is within me. Baruch Yahuwah, oh my soul, and all that is within me. I will baruch your name. I will baruch your name. Your name. I will baruch your name. Baruch Yahuwah, oh my soul, and all that is within me. Baruch Yahuwah, oh my soul, and all that is within me. I will baruch your name. I will baruch your name. I will baruch your name. I will baruch your name within me. Oh my soul, and all. I will baruch your name. I will baruch your name. I will baruch your name. Oh my soul, and all that is within me. Oh my soul, and all that is within me. I will baruch your name. 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 Oh my soul, and all that is within me. Oh my soul, and will praise your name. Is within me. Oh, my soul, and all that is within me. I will praise your name. I will praise your name. I will praise your soul, and all that is within me. Oh, my soul, and all that is within me. I will praise your name. 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 Oh, my soul, and all that is within me. Oh, my soul, and all that is within me. I will praise your name. 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 And all that is within me. Oh, my soul, and all that is within me. I will praise your name. 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 Oh, my soul, and all that is within me. Oh, my soul, and all that is within me. I will praise your name. 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 Especially 15 and 18, the sacrifices of the wicked is an abomination, hateful, and exceedingly offensive unto you, all Yahuwah. But the prayer of the upright, it is your delight. Mishlei 3 and 4, so shall you find esteem, great understanding, and high esteem in the sight or judgment of Yahuwah and man and yourself. Abraham 11 and 6, but without belief it is impossible to please him. For he that cometh to Yahuwah must believe that he is, and that he is a rewarder of them that diligently seek him. To Tehillim 1 and 1, Baruch is the man that walketh not in the counsel of the unrighteous, nor standeth in the way of sinners, nor sitteth in the seat of the scornful. But his delight is in the instruction, doth meditate upon it, and it is so. And it is so. And it is so. To Tehillim 34 and 15, the eyes of Yahuwah are upon the upright, and his ears are open unto. Verse 17, the upright cry, and Yahuwah heareth and delivereth us out of all our trouble. For we shall receive power. After that, the Ruach HaKodesh has come upon us, and we shall be witnesses unto him, both in Jerusalem and in all Judea and Shamara, and unto the uttermost part of the earth. And it is so. And it is so. Now I want us to turn our attention to Yehukanan, Aleph, chapter 5, verses 1 through 15. And I read it every time, and I need to read it more, but you need to read it to your Ruach and let it burn into your heart, because it's very important and necessary that we keep this at the forefront of our hearts, because we are to guard Torah. And you have to understand what you are guarding. You're guarding the belief that the Abba has given unto us. What is that belief? The belief in his son. So you have to understand when he said guard the Torah, he's talking about guarding the belief that we have in the Mashiach, because it has not just come under attack, it has been under attack for centuries and will continue to be under attack. But it's important that we guard this belief and life in our hearts. It's not enough for it to be in your mind. It has to be embedded and implanted in the hearts of us that are believers. And it's important that we keep this at the helm of our lives. It has come under attack and will continue to come under attack and be assaulted by ignorant people that don't know any better. Are you following me?
Yes.
Especially those that continue to say, oh, we don't need the renewed covenant or the so-called New Testament. Let me tell you something. You have to understand, this is what gives us access to the first covenant, the renewed covenant, because we were not around when the first covenant was instituted. But the renewed covenant gives us access through Yahushua Mashiach. And without this access, we have no claims or right to an inheritance. It's important that we understand that. And it's important that we keep this burning in the fires of our hearts, because this and will continue to be under attack by the enemy. It will continue. Chapter 5, verse 1, all the way to verse 15, and it reads, everyone who believes that Yahushua is the Mashiach has been born of Yahuwah. And everyone who ahabs the one bringing forth also ahabs the one having been born of him. By this we know that we ahab the children of Yahuwah, when we ahab Yahuwah and guard his commands. For this is the ahab for Yahuwah, that we guard his commands, and his commands are not difficult. Because everyone having been born, or been gotten, of Yahuwah overcomes the world. And this is the overcoming that has overcome the world, our belief. Who is the one who overcomes the world but he who believes that Yahushua is the son of Yahuwah? That's a question. Now he goes on to give us, and it is the Ruach who bears witness, because the Ruach is the truth. Because there are three who bear witness, the Ruach and the water and the blood, and the three are in agreement. It is important here that Yehukanan is bringing forth. Why is he bringing forth this case? Because there were many that did not believe that the Mashiach was the Mashiach. Many of them believed that he was a malach. In other words, they thought he was an angel. Many believed that he was something else. And I'm going to say that, and this may rattle many people, which I don't use the word God, but many believed that he was the God-man. In other words, that he was not flesh. And so therefore, they tried to remove him. And so Yehukanan is basically bringing about an argument, and he is showing forth truth, and he is bringing it forth to those that did not believe and to those that believe. His whole mindset was to make sure those of us that believe would not stop believing because of the evidence that would come forth against the Mashiach. So it's important that we understand that. Now listen at verse 9. If we receive the witness of men, the witness of Yahuwah is what?
Greater.
Say it again.
Greater.
Say it again.
Greater.
It is greater, because this is the witness of Yahuwah, which he has witnessed concerning his son. It is very important that we understand verse 9. Why is it important that we understand verse 9? Because verse 9 tells us it does not matter what other witness comes about. If you are a true believer in the Abba, then you are not going to allow man's witness or his proof deter you from the proof and the evidence that the Abba has given you concerning his son.
Right.
This is important. The one who believes, verse 10, in the Son of Yahuwah has the witness in himself. The one who does not believe Yahuwah has made him a liar, because he has not believed the witness that Yahuwah has given concerning his son. And this is the witness that Yahuwah has given us eternal life. And this life is in his son. He who possesses the son possesses. It's important that we hold fast to this, because without this, we have nothing to substantiate or hold on to. But this is what we need. And this right here is to help us to hold on and not let go. It's important that we understand that. Now listen what he says in verse 13. I have written this to you who believe in the name of the Son of Yahuwah. Meaning this is for those that don't believe and have tried and have made the Abba a liar. This is not for them. This is for us who believe. So that you know that you possess certificate. And what I mean by that, our certificate of proof and our certificate of evidence that the Mashiach is the son of Abba Yahuwah, and that if we walk according to his instructions and we live and we give it all we have, then when we ask him according to his instructions certain things, he will grant them to us. Now we are witnesses to his kindness, because all of us can truly say that we asked him for certain things, and he has granted us the things that we asked him according to his what? Instructions and desire for our lives.
Good.
So it's important that we hold on to that and never let anybody take that away from us. The enemy have crept in. The enemy have found cracks. He's found different weak places. And he's trying to not just dilute, but he is trying to poison and contaminate our way of life. And he's just doing what he does. That's his role. That is his purpose, to bring us to a place of doubt. Because remember, the only way to overcome this world system, because if we don't believe in him, then everything else has no meaning. It has no meaning. So understand, Yahush is our doorway to the covenant. For if we don't accept the renewed covenant, we don't have access to the first covenant. It's important that we understand that. And many of our Ak and Akodi have forfeited and just have blatantly aborted this, not realizing the moment they cut ties with the renewed covenant, they lost all benefits to the first covenant. Are you following?
Yeah.
Because this is an assignment that is placed upon my life to tell you and to make you stay encouraged and keep myself encouraged and keeping our how in the Mashiach. Are y'all following me?
Yes.
Very important for us to understand that. Very important that we hold on and not let go. And it is so.
Yes.
All right. Let us have another song, please.
Rise among us, let the power of Yahuwah rise among us, let the praises of our King rise among us, let it rise. Let the power of Yahuwah rise among us, let the power of Yahuwah rise among us, let the praises of our King rise among us, let it rise. Let the power of Yahuwah rise among us. Let the power of Yahuwah rise among us. Let the praises of our King it rise. Rise among us, let it rise. Let the power of Yahuwah rise among us. Let the power of Yahuwah rise among us. Let the praise, let it rise. Let it rise. Let it rise. Rise among us. Let the power of Yahuwah rise among us. Let the praises of our King. Let it rise. Let it rise. Let it rise. Let it rise. Let it rise.
Worthy of all praise, worthy of all esteem. We do once again, Toda Diaba for once again allowing us. It is not a request, it is a command that we take this time of rest for. In doing so, we show forth the covenant and our bond with the Abba. So it is important that we understand the principle and the purpose of our taking this time of rest. We're going to have another song, and then we're going to be prepared to go into part two. That's right, part two. We have part one, which is praise and worship. Then we have part two, which is our time of listening and going through the writings. Once again, it is always a pleasure and a joy to be before you, whether it is 2, 3, 4, 5, whatever, however many amount. It is always a pleasure to be able to bring forth the instructions of the Abba to encourage our hearts and to keep us at a place of remembrance. Very important that we understand that. And especially, and I express that sincerely from my heart, especially in the hour that we are in. So it's important we do so. At this time, we're going to do our declaration. Okay. Healing. Repeat with me. Abba Yahuwah.
Abba Yahuwah.
In the name of Yahush.
In the name of Yahush.
Our Mashiach.
Our Mashiach.
We subdue ignorance.
We subdue ignorance.
With Torah knowledge.
With Torah knowledge.
And through this knowledge.
And through this knowledge.
Of Torah truth.
Of Torah truth.
We claim healing.
We claim healing.
Shalom.
Shalom.
Deliverance.
Deliverance.
And salvation.
And salvation.
We decree.
We decree.
Torah truth.
Torah truth.
In the lives.
In the lives.
Of your people.
Of your people.
Our people.
Our people.
Yasharal.
Yasharal.
We unite.
We unite.
Not to fight.
Not to fight.
Not to fight.
Not to be born again.
I am Ibn.
I am Ibn.
I have the life and nature.
I have the life and nature.
Of Yahuwah and Maruah.
Of Yahuwah and Maruah.
That life is.
That life is.
The Torah of Yasharal.
The Torah of Yasharal.
I purpose to win.
I purpose to walk in.
The Torah of life.
The Torah of life.
Yahuwah's Torah.
Yahuwah's Torah.
Yahush.
Yahush.
Is in me.
Is in me.
Yahuwah's knowledge.
Yahuwah's knowledge.
Is in me.
Is in me.
Yahuwah's ahab.
Yahuwah's ahab.
Is in me.
Is in me.
Yahuwah's power.
Yahuwah's power.
Is in me.
Is in me.
Yahuwah's wisdom
Yahuwah's wisdom
is in me.
is in me.
He is teaching me.
He is teaching
He
me.
is leading me.
He is leading me.
I am a child of Yahuwah.
I am a child of Yahuwah.
The Ruach
The Ruach
HaKodesh
HaKodesh
of Yahuwah in me
of Yahuwah in me
is leading me.
is leading me.
I'll follow her leading.
I'll follow her leading.
I'll walk in the Torah.
I'll walk in the Torah.
Yahush,
Yahush,
our Mashiach.
Al-Mashiach,
And it is so.
and it is so.
Now let us have a song, please. Let everything that has breath praise Yahuwah. Let everything that has breath praise Yahuwah. Let everything that has breath praise Yahuwah. Has breath praise Yahuwah. Yeah, 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 yeah. Let everything that has breath praise Yahuwah. 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 Yeah, 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 Let everything that has breath praise Yahuwah. Let everything that has breath praise Yahuwah. Praiseworthy of all esteem. From Tehillim 19 and 14. Let us bow before our King. And let us say this together. May the utterance of my mouth
May the utterance of my mouth
and the deliberation of my heart
and the deliberation of my heart
be desirable.
Redeemer.
May the utterance of my mouth
May the utterance of my mouth
and the deliberation of my heart
and the deliberation of my heart
be desirable before you.
be desirable before you.
Oh Yahuwah,
O Yahuwah,
my rock
my rock
and my redeemer.
and my redeemer.
Come on, one more time. May the utterance of my mouth
May the utterance of my mouth
and the deliberation of my heart
and the deliberation of my heart
be desirable before you.
be desirable before you.
Oh Yahuwah,
O Yahuwah,
my rock
my rock
and my redeemer.
and my redeemer.
And it is so.
And it is so.
And it is so.
And so,
We have just recited from Tehillim 19 and 14. I get excited reading it and sometimes go past it, but it is all great. You may be seated in his presence as we prepare to go into part 2 of our time of Shabbat class. I enjoy the writings so very, very much. And I appreciate what they say, and they say the same thing to all of us. Helps us to maintain some lifting of our heads, lifting of our hearts, a lifting of who we are. And I just appreciate him for opening my eyes to be able to walk into this way of life. And not just know about it, but truly be able to appreciate it and walk in it and experience the power that is involved in this way of life. Don't think for one moment that this way of life is boring, because it's not. Never think for one moment that this way of life does not have does not come with power, benefits, and all of those great things. But this life is very beneficial to those of us that accept it, embrace it, and walk in it according to the instructions that have been given, not the customs or the traditions of men, but the unadulterated, raw Torah instructions for our lives that the Abba has given. To encourage you, I want you to turn your attention to Luke chapter 13, as we're going to look at the life of Yahush once again during the times and in between the times of the feast. What was he doing during those times? What was his life like? And so we're going to had hands-on experience with the people. He was not just a distant savior, but he was excuse me, up close excuse me, and personal with the children of Yasharal, of the diaspora, those that have been dispersed, those of that have been scattered. Because remember, according to Matthew 15 and 24, he came not but for who? The prostituting sheep of Yasharal. So we're seeing the beginning of the work of the Abba through the lifestyle of the Mashiach during this time. And so it is important that we understand that he was here and that he walked the face of the earth, contrary to popular belief and contrary to many of those that will continually fight and say that he was not present and that the renewed covenant is not prevalent, but actually that the renewed covenant, which many have called the New Testament, is a lie. And we know better than that. We know it is not a lie, but we know there is true relevance and there is truth in it. And without it, once again, we are not qualified, or we do not qualify for the renewed covenant. For how would you know a covenant ever existed without the renewal policy? And so the renewed covenant is the policy that helps us to understand the first covenant. But without the first covenant, there is no need for a renewed covenant or policy. And without the renewed policy, there is no access into the first policy or covenant. And so this is our way of access to it. Once again, contrary to popular belief, many believe that it is unnecessary and that we don't need it, but we need it, just like a person applying for insurance or reapplying for insurance. If you've never understood or had insurance, then you won't understand it. In order to qualify for benefits, watches that have already been in the system and already been out there, you got to first become a part of it. And until you become a part of it, then you don't understand the benefits. And so it is important that we not allow the enemy to blind us or to steal from us these important truths and the benefits that come along with this way of life. I want to present unto us on this Layla a presentation and a life and a outline of his life in action, showing that he was once again a part of the children of Yasharal's life, showing that he was concerned about these things, and the things that he did was based upon his relationship with the Abba. Contrary to what Christianity has put out there, the Mashiach, Yahush, never came to do away with the instructions of the Abba. He never came to silence it. Are you following me?
Yes.
Once again, Matthew 5:17 and 18 tells us that. He said, don't think that I've come to destroy or to put away or to silence the instructions of the Abba, but to fulfill it and to bring forth its purpose through the expression of his life, if I can put it in that manner. So it is important that we understand, but we're in a day and time that many people don't accept it. Why? Because once again, of the proof that many times people get before they get the real proof. Now somebody will say, what do you mean by that? There is a concept in a way that many of us, excuse me, define or accept truth as being truth or reject truth or the evidence that is presented to us. There's a formula. Everybody has a way or have determined within themselves. There's a certain way that if it's not presented or it is not designed or structured, then they're not going to accept it. And so I want to show you one of the things that's important for us to understand is how we accept information is going to determine whether or not we utilize that information as proof and evidence or whether we reject it. So I want to just give you a brief scenario of what this person said in their writing, Beware of the Lunar Sabbath. Now, understand this is not my teaching onto Layla, but I just want to use the brief concept that he uses to show that there's a concept and there's an idea of how people accept or reject information. He goes on to say, what constitutes proof? He said, I have found that there are different levels of what constitutes proof in the mind of individuals. Some require just a little bit of evidence to support a doctrine or belief, while others require a lot of evidence to support a doctrine or belief. But it is very important that we rely on real evidence to support our belief rather than an interpretation of evidence. He also goes on to say, in my mind, the evidence used to prove, once again, he's talking about the lunar Sabbath, but we can also use this as a platform to understand why people believe the way they believe. The lunar Sabbath doctrine relies on a person to already be predisposed to believing in the lunar Sabbath in order to interpret the evidence in such a way that supports their doctrine. This is important to understand because this is just not concerning the lunar Sabbath keepers, but this is also the way that many people interpret different things. Because if you find a person, once again, that has already been predisposed to believing in a subject or a belief, then that person's evidence or proof is going to be based upon where they stand and how they believe.
Right.
Are you hearing me? That's important to understand because a person that is set on believing a certain way is going to push that. Is that wrong? No, it's not wrong, especially if it is the right evidence and the right proof. Problem comes in is that if we're pushing the wrong thing and we have this mindset, then we're not going to be eager to change. Are y'all following me?
Yes.
We're not going to be ready to change. Why? Because we have already made up in our minds that this is the way it is, and we're not going to follow any other way. Now listen at this. This is what he goes on to say. I found that in order to really believe in the lunar Sabbath doctrine, one would need to rely on a certain level of highly interpretive evidence rather than real proof. Now, once again, I'm reading this. This is not my subject, but I'm using this platform to show how we as a people take this same mindset, whether it is talking about lunar Sabbath keepers or people that believe in the Mashiach or in this way of life.
Right.
Are y'all following me?
Yes.
All right. Yet, strung throughout some lunar Sabbatarian literature are very strong terms such as conclusive proof. Now, we've heard that too, not once again just concerning lunar Sabbath keepers, but even in doctrines that come against the Mashiach. Conclusive proof. When examining this conclusive proof, it becomes clear that the evidence offered is far from proof, let alone conclusive. So why would they say that? Once again, it is based upon the person's belief and where they stand with their proof of evidence. We should beware of someone's broad brush use of terms like this and be a good judge of whether or not what they offer is really proof. Are y'all hearing me?
Yes.
You hear me use the term and use when we talk about crooked cops and back in the day, and they still do it, where they would take a gun to those that they would shoot or had shot when they would shoot innocent people, and they would take guns and they would put those guns on them, saying that they had a gun. Now they don't even have to show proof that there's a gun. Their word is what is proof, and according to the system, is good enough. But there was a time that you had to show for proof in order to substantiate your cause or your reason for shooting and killing a person. Are you following?
Yeah.
All right. Now, it is easy to be swayed by such strong terminology. So we should be willing to make our own judgments about whether or not their evidence really is proof. Now, the question will be, how do we go about that? Now, so at the heart of where we stand regarding the doctrine is determining what truly constitutes a scriptural fact. Now, once again, it is and once again, this is talking about lunar Sabbath, the lunar Sabbath doctrine, is merely a surmising or a theory which requires one to believe that a series of possibilities are actually establishing facts. Now, once again, we could take this same platform and apply it to Young. Are these theories based upon proof and evidence? Are they based upon facts? Facts change, but truth remains the same consistently.
Right.
Are you following me?
Yes.
This is why it is important that anything we get or we receive, that we make sure it is based upon evidence as well as proof. The evidence has to be just as strong as the proof that is provided. Very important for that to be so. Now, what I want to do also, I want to show you something that will help to support what I just said. Now, many of us are trying to get out of using the English language anyway. We want to use something else. But I want to show you how this mindset has constantly been intertwined into our consciousness and even to the way we deal with things, to the point that we accept things just because other people accept it. Okay, now I want to show you something. Once again, the reason why I'm saying this is because we're going to once again look at Yahush and what he did during the times of the feast and in between the times of the feast, showing the consistency of his lifestyle through the writings. Okay, but I want to show you something that we have to be aware of, because these things, once again, we can be indoctrinated and be living a way and doing things and think, oh, that's just the way I do. No, it's something that we've learned. Habits can formulate many times by what we've learned. Are you hearing me?
Yes.
So I want to read this to you. Now, we've heard of the word ain't, right?
Yes.
We use it religiously at times. But I want to show you something. Speakers of non-standard English use ain't as a contraction for am not, is not, are not, has not, and have not. Some authorities feel that ain't would be a useful addition to informal English as a contraction for am not in questions. I'm supposed to sit here, ain't I? Particularly since there is no established contraction for am I not. They point out that am not or am I has never been generally accepted, and aren't I, which is accepted, is certainly no more grammatically correct than ain't I. Nevertheless, ain't remains non-standard in all uses. And the furor that rose some years ago when third edition of Webster's New International Dictionary noted that many cultivated speakers use ain't I for am I not would suggest the acceptance of ain't is unlikely, or at least a long way off. So actually, when you use the word ain't, it's not actually a word to be used. But because it has been accepted, people tend to use it. Are y'all following me? Mm-hmm. They use words. Why? Because it gets in the mainstream. Now, let me show you something else with this. Now, let's look at the word allow. Once again, this is not my subject, but I want to build a platform to show us how quick and easily it is to dismiss the things that are right and accept the things that are most popular and common because it's acceptable. But just because it's acceptable doesn't make it what?
Right.
Right.
Doesn't make it right. Absolutely. All right, now let's look at the word. Let me see. Don't need to allow. All right, let's look at the word borrow. Borrow and lend. In standard English, the verbs borrow and lend are used to mean two different things. This is the standard. David borrowed a sweater from John. David got a sweater from John. Standard, John lent David a sweater. John gave David a sweater. Borrower, gets, a lender gives. In some regional dialects, listen at this, however, borrow is used to mean lend. Dialect, will you borrow me $1? That's the dialect. Many of us would be like, what? That makes absolutely no sense. Dialect. This is the way they what? Speak. Now look at this. The standard, will you lend or loan me $1? Dialect, I borrowed him 50 cents. standard, I lent him 50 cents. So once again, the importance of understanding is just like we see the word ain't, because it has been put into use and practice. Now it has become adopted and legalized, not because it's grammatically correct, but because it has been used by so many people that now it is what? Socially acceptable. Am I making sense?
Yes.
Are y'all sure?
Yes.
So it becomes socially acceptable. Why? Because of the people that use it regularly. It is the same thing when we get information. Because it is a broad scope, many times whatever is presented, if it is presented from the right people or person, we tend to accept it. And we tend to say, oh, it has to be right, because there's no way they could be wrong.
That's right.
By whose definition? Huh? Are y'all feeling it?
Yes.
Y'all hearing it?
Yes.
This is important for us to understand. Why? Because so many people have picked apart the writings and they have found scripture and verses, and they have taken them and twisted them to substantiate their proof of evidence that the Mashiach doesn't exist, and that the renewed covenant is not even valid. Why? And they say, just as I said, because many people have accepted it, and then people say, well, it was pushed on us by the European to keep us in bondage. So it is a person's perception and their belief on whether it's proof or evidence, that which has been given them, without doing an extensive research on it. You've heard me say and testify about even turkey. How one Shabbat we were sharing the stew we had made, turkey stew, and we got information saying that turkey was unclean because it was related to the vulture, and because we got information that substantiated their position of belief that it was unclean. We failed to even look at what how the turkey was created. We just basically looked at information that was given to us. What is an ornithologist? Is that how you say it? Study of birds? Ornithologist? Ornithologist. One who studies birds. So unless you've studied birds, you can't just go on its appearance, which we did. I am guilty of that. Are you following me? So we base it upon appearance, but we don't base it upon the lifestyle of the turkey, which where we erred, because we got information and evidence and proof, but the evidence and proof is contrary to the reality of what the bird really is. Turkeys are not unclean. They're clean birds. Their character denotes they're clean. They don't eat meat. Are you hearing me?
Yes.
Their stomach is created differently than a vulture. Even though they have some of the ugliest heads, they still have hair, or well, not hair, but feathers on their heads. They are vulture because vultures cannot grow feathers on their head because they eat carrion. So now that's again something that disqualifies them for being a part of the vulture family. I'm saying, go pushing this out there. Let me do the study of this bird first before I make this bird something it's not. Now, we didn't basically villainize and make this bird out to be something it's not, and that's unclean. Are y'all following me?
Yes.
We made this bird to be a dirty bird, and it's not a dirty bird. And then you have to understand, many people say, y'all, it's not that, but because, watch this, of the evidence and proof we had, we said it's got to be. There's no way this could be wrong. Even though they were presenting to us a different side of the spectrum that gave it a better platform or foundation that says it's not an unclean bird, we chose to believe what we had most of or more of, and that was evidence that was presented to us with proof that this bird was a dirty bird. But it was wrong. Once again, let's look at the structure of the bird. The structure of the bird's stomach. Let's look at the character of the bird. The bird doesn't eat dead food, dead things, and doesn't eat meat. And one of the number one things people say, even about chickens, well, they eat their own feces. You eat bass, you eat brown, and they eat bottom stuff too. Are you hearing me?
Yes.
So we can't use that as the means to define what is clean and what is unclean. Abba Yahuwah said the pig is an abomination and not to be eaten because it's not food.
God.
And that's it. He didn't tell us to go and research why it was unclean. He said it's an abomination and not food.
God.
So we leave it at that. But when you have those that are too smart for them, for their own selves, that says, well, we need to know why it's unclean. So we can determine why he said it. It doesn't matter if he never gives us a characteristic of these things. If he says it's clean or unclean, then we follow that. But the bottom line is we cannot continue. We start misleading and misguiding people. And that's where we get in trouble. Because now you start putting people in positions that now they say, well, we can't eat this, then let's eat this. Now it's amazing that people never look up when it comes to vegetables, what are clean vegetables and what are unclean vegetables. As sure as there's clean meat and unclean meat, there are clean vegetables and unclean vegetables. There are things that you cannot eat or not supposed to eat, but nobody ever talks about that. So we just think that being a vegan and think about eating all these vegetables, it's okay. We can eat whatever we want. You're 3D. That's not true.
Right.
That's not true. So it's important that we understand, because there are some things that you cannot eat. There are some berries that are poisonous. There are some vines, there are some roots that are poisonous, and you can't eat those roots. Now, we brought into question mushrooms. Many times people are hot mushrooms, but a mushroom is a fungus, and a mushroom doesn't have a seed. It's a fungus. So I still question whether or not. Now, understand, I'm not putting out there that it is unclean, and I'm not saying it's clean. I'm saying that we need to question what it is, because it's a fungus. And I know that some of them, what is the reishi? What's that mushroom? Reishi mushroom has certain properties that are supposed to help the body. But you have to understand there are other herbs that do the same thing. Are y'all following me? Yes. So some things are based upon preference instead of really walking and acknowledging these things as true. Are y'all following me? And so once again, when we put the mushroom out there, you have to ask the question, what is a mushroom? It's a fungus. So you have to be careful with these things. Other leaves, things that's out there. Are these things edible? If it's not edible, then that means it's not clean. And then people try to crossbreed it to make it edible. Now watch this. You have people that are eating, what is it called? Not kumquat, the plumquat or the plum peach, one of them. Where they've taken and they've crossbred the peach, and I think it's the plum. And now you have this hybrid, genetically modified fruit. And when you go and look, it's gone. Because you have a lot of vegans that eat these things because it's a what? Vegetable or a fruit. But we don't question whether or not it's clean. Can we eat it just because it's a fruit or a vegetable? Because everything that's a vegetable and everything that's a fruit doesn't mean that it's clean and it's edible. Once again, it is based many times upon the evidence and the information that is presented to whether or not we're going to accept it or reject it. This is what we really have to be very careful in what we accept. Are y'all following me?
Yes.
And what we accept. Now that brings us to what we're going to be looking at on to Yom. Chapter 13 of Luke, and we're going to start at verse 10. And we're going to be looking at Yahush heals a woman bowed over for 18 years. Now I hope to encourage everyone with this, but I'm really looking at encouraging our sisters. Excuse me. I'm not one that breaks up and says, you know, this is for the men and this is for the women. No, but there are times in the writings that we do see that Abba Yahuwah showed particular care at certain times, and depending on what was going on in their lives, for women or for a man. So it's important that we look at, he was not just going looking for all the men of Yasharal, he was looking for Yasharal. It said the prostitutes of Yasharal, meaning men and women. because none of them were living according to the standard that the Abba had placed out there. So he was not just going to get the men so the men could go get the women. He was going and getting all of Yasharon. He was doing it. And then he was turning around and then releasing them to go get. Are you following me?
Yes.
So it's important that we understand that, and once again, not allow tradition and the customs of men to put us in boxes and to silence us. Now, if teaching or being a mora or more is not your position, then I would not say get in it.
Okay.
But I will say, if it is your position, then walk in it, and walk in it according to the anointing that he's placed upon your life to do so. All right. Now, let's look at this chapter 13, and we'll look at verse 10, and we're going to look at what is going on during this time. And it is so. All right, let's read 4 verses.
Luke chapter 13, verse 10. And he was teaching in one of the congregations on the Shabbat. And see, there was a woman having a weakening spirit for 18 years, and was bent over, and was unable to straighten up at all. And Yahush, seeing her, called her near, and said to her, Woman, you are loosened from your weakness. And he laid his hands on her, and immediately she was straightened up, and praised Yahuwah. But the ruler of the congregation, responding, much displeased that Yahush had healed on the Shabbat, saying to the crowd, There are 6 days on which men should work, so come and be healed on them, and not on the Shabbat day.
And it is so. That sounds just like a lot of people today.
Huh.
Now you have to understand, Yahush is compassionate, because Abba Yahuwah is what? Compassionate and long-suffering. It's important that we understand. Yahush was teaching in one of the synagogues on the what? The Sabbath. And behold, there was a woman which had a ruach, or spirit of infirmity, 18 years, and was bent over and could in no wise straighten up herself. Now, can you imagine being bent over for 18 years? You know, when you get an infirmity, something that you know what an inflammation is. Inflammation means that your muscles are inflamed always. You're constantly in pain. You're hurting. You don't have no kind of relief. And so she's been over for 18 years because of pain. But this was not just an ordinary pain. This was a spirit. This was a spirit of infirmity. So there's a difference. There was no tea to heal that. There was no balm to heal that. She needed the power of the Mashiach to intervene and bring forth this healing. Now, let me show you something. The importance about understanding even the people that you are around. And when Yahuwah saw her, he called her to him and said to her, Woman, you are free from your infirmity. Now, look at this. And he laid his hands on her, and immediately she was made straight. Now, once again, this is during the time of what? Shabbat. They're in Shabbat. They're in class. But Shabbat is a time of manifestation of the miracles, the healing, and the virtue and the compassion of the Abba.
Right.
That is the time we ought to see these things. Now listen at what this person says. And the ruler of the synagogue, not the person, the overseer, the moral, the teacher, the ruler, answered with indignation because Yahush had healed on the Sabbath yom, and said to the people. Now, he didn't say this to the Mashiach. He said to the people. Why? Because he was reinforcing, based upon his stand of truth, that this was an error, that Yahush was an error for bringing forth healing on the Sabbath, because this is what they constituted as work. How does that work? It's not. But once again, remember, proof and evidence. How a person deciphers information is going to determine how they walk in that information, or receive it or reject that what they've received. Now listen, there are 6 young men in which men ought to work. So come in them and be healed, and not on the Sabbath young. That is something to say to somebody that's been over and afflicted. You go into this place all these years, they know what's going on with you, but yet they tell you this ain't the time for you to be healed. You can come on any other yom, but this is not the yom for that to be going on. Now you have to understand something. If that is the mindset now, you can understand what the mindset was before Yahushua even came into her life. Well, you got to do what you got to do because you are supposed to be here. You're supposed to be here. How can you rest when you are hurting? How can you really apply yourself to it and you're hurting? Excuse me. It's very difficult. But you have to understand, I believe with all my heart she was dedicated. That's why she was there. Dedicated people don't give up. You might have to take a side seat for a moment, but then you get up. You know, when a boxer is called into his corner, and they go in there and they give him that pep talk, and you know, he said, "Come on, we can do this." Eye may be all swollen, lip all busted, face all marred and messed up, and you in that about that 4th round, and you looking, you got 10 rounds to go, and you go in and say, "You can't throw in the top, but you got this time to reassess. You got this time to do," and you in that corner. This is why it's great to have great people in your corner. Because if you don't, you can feel like, is this in vain what I'm doing? Am I making any kind of impact? Am I doing anything that is relevant? Are y'all following?
Yes.
But here she was, and Yahushua saw her, and he had compassion on her. That's important. If you are not with people that are compassionate, that's not the place you want to be. It's not. Because the bottom line is, why are you there? Are you there just because of servitude, or are you there out of fear? Are you hearing me?
Yes.
It's important to ask these questions. Listen at verse 15. Then Yahushua then answered him and said, "You hypocrite, do not each one of you on the Sabbath day loose his ox or his donkey from the stall and lead him away to the water?" Now, once again, this is one of the things that I constantly say. You have to understand, I don't have a vendetta against vegans. But when people get up and say that they are advocates or spokesmen for animals and don't care how people are being treated, I say just as Yahushua said, you hypocrites, or you hypocrite. On the Sabbath, they knew that their animals needed to eat and needed to be watered. That's work. Because you got to loose them with you. But according to their standards, that was not work. Once again, based upon what? Their evidence and their proof that constituted their way of doing things. Are y'all following me? This is why it is a bad thing to define information based upon your own interpretation. Because that's a very dangerous place to be in. They cared more about their animals than they did this woman being bent over for 18 years, which was probably one of their family members. Are y'all following me?
Yes.
Very important to understand. Now listen once again, as he rebukes them. And in verse 16, and ought not this woman, being a daughter, listen, of Abraham, whom Shaitan has bound for these 18 years, be released from this imprisonment on the Sabbath yom? He's saying, why? You know who she is. So why would you accept her in this condition? That's another thing. Don't let people accept you in a condition you know you deserve to be healed and delivered from. If you can't do it, then give me to somebody that can. Or rejoice with me when the opportunity or the time comes and I'm free. Are y'all following me?
Yes.
And you have to understand, especially because she was what? A woman. Of course, they were going to be angry. You know, because why would you want to heal a woman? Of course, there'd be a man, but with a woman, especially how we come under fire a lot of times, and there is no spokesman at times, not all the time, for women, unless you're a person of notoriety or connected to a person of notoriety. Sometimes your case and cause goes unnoticed. We call everything but who we really are, daughters of Abraham. Are you following? Yes. Daughters of Yahshua. Everything but that. But look how Yahush stood up and said who she was and did not take on the mindset as they had concerning her. Now, this is where we have to understand. Just because some of these brothers out there view you in a certain way doesn't mean that the Mashiach and the Abba views us that way. We can never, ever accept that and say, well, is that the way? No, because remember, he's not man. He created man, but he is not man. He does not think like men do. Are y'all following?
Yes.
This is important for us to understand and grab on. This was imprisonment, and he brought her free or loosed her on the Sabbath. Once again, this is why when we celebrate the Sabbath, it is important that we understand and what our expectations are during the Sabbath. Are we just coming because we're looking for a time to sleep all day, or we're looking for a time to hurry up and get it over with so we can get to the next Yom? Or are we really looking for an opportunity for the Mashiach to come in and bring forth healing and deliverance? Are you hearing me?
Yes.
It's important that we understand that. She was in prison. You know, you be wanting folk to be free. That just and somebody bent over. You have to understand. He loves us. He loves us so much that he's willing to bring forth healing in our lives. But we got to believe that. We can't let people in their foolishness take us away from that. Are you hearing me?
Yes.
All right, let's look at this. I want to show you. I like to read these the footnotes for this one. Now, this was imprisonment on the Sabbath, meaning that they're just interpretations of the writing. I won't say hint and so, but the meaning of this is her being bowed down by pressure from the nations to split her land. She is being beat up by the Muslims and traumatized. The Mashiach heals her completely on the Sabbath. Here looking also to the greater millennium Sabbath when Yahshua will be fully healed as this woman was. So it was for them to look at what he was doing in her life as a total of what he was going to do for Yahshua. Because we are under pressure. If we can look at that and look in that time that Yahshua was under pressure. You are you're at home, but you're still not at home. You really can't place any roots down because you could be uprooted at any time. That's not a way to live. Are you following me? Yes. So understanding what the analogy is and what he was wanting to show them, but because of their ignorance, they missed it. Are you following me?
Yeah.
But help us not to miss what you're doing and what you're showing us through compassion. Are you hearing me? To our people. All right, let's read. Let's finish reading. Let's read 17 to 21.
Verse 17. When he had said these things, all his adversaries were ashamed, and all the people rejoiced for all the esteemed things that were done by him. Then said he, unto what is the kingdom of Yahuwah like, and whereunto shall I resemble it? It is like a grain of mustard seed, which a man took and cast into his garden, and it grew and waxed a great tree, and the fowls of the air lodged in the branches of it. And again he said, whereunto shall I liken the kingdom of Yahuwah? It is like leaven, which a woman took and hid in 3 measures of meal till the whole was leavened. And it is so.
And it is so. Now, once again, it's important that we look at what is being done here. He once again uses the analogy of a woman. We were never thrown out. We were never by Abba Yahuwah or Yahush or even the Malach, the righteous, thrown away. It was the customs and the tradition of men that had a problem and still have a problem with women. So these are the ones that constantly pop up in in your classes, your messages. You out of order. Sit down and be quiet. Don't open your mouth, and you need to have this, you need to have that, and you need to be doing this. Because this is the custom and traditions of men. You don't hear and see anything where Yahushua is degrading her or asking her 50 billion questions. Why are you bent over? He already knew. Are you following me? He
Yes.
already knew. But he showed compassion. Then look what he says, the kingdom whereunto shall I resemble it. Verse 19, Luke chapter 13, verse 19. It is like a grain of mustard seed. And anybody's ever seen a mustard seed? A mustard seed is so tiny. It is so tiny. But watch this. Which a man took and cast into his garden, and it grew and waxed a great etza. And the birds of the air lodged in the branches of it. And again he said, What unto shall I liken the kingdom of power? Once again, mustard trees are big, and birds of the air lodge in it for protection. So I mean, that teeny tiny seed produces a great big tree. Verse 21, it is like leaven, and we know what leaven does, which a woman took and hid in 3 measures of meal till the whole was leavened. It expands and it spreads. That's why I tell you only use a little bit of leaven. Anybody crazy? They put all that leaven in there, and the bread blew up the stove, and that bread expanded. As they over exaggerated, but the whole room was full of bread because they were just showing you the power of leaven. How just a tiny bit leavens the whole lump. You can take a little tiny bit, put it in a piece of bread like this, or the dough, and when you come back, it'll be this large because it gets in there and it adds air, and it just causes it to expand. Now listen at this. Until the whole was leavened. In other words, so it expanded. This is what is important for us to understand. This is what the kingdom is like. When we accept the kingdom of Abba Yahuwah in us, we should expand. Our reach should expand. Our desire for him should expand. But there are times that we find ourselves being in situations to where instead of accepting the kingdom, we accept the opinions and the definition of what the kingdom is from people. So we end up missing it. Because if it is likened unto leaven and a mustard tree, then that means we should be living large. And I don't mean large with everything we want, but I'm talking about to where people see us, they begin to respect us because of what is being produced in us. Are you hearing me?
Yes.
A Hob should be more. We should have more compassion. We should have more patience, long suffering. If these things are not being produced and it's not expanding our lives, then there's something wrong. There's something wrong because we ought to see a change. When there is no change, that means something has not been accepted and something has not been received. All he had to do was put the seed in the ground. All she had to do was put the leaven in the bread, and it would do the rest. All we have to do is accept the kingdom, are you hearing me, of Abba Yahuwah, accept Yahush, and guess what? Things will start happening. All we do is what? Be the catalyst. Willfully allow these things to happen and not sit there and fight it. Because if we do, then we're going to miss it. And this is, once again, important for us to understand. Evidence and proof based upon other people's beliefs can either destroy it or they can promote it. I was saying earlier today, and even I've been asking myself this question all week long. What is it that we as a people, or I, let me make it personal, I can say to a people, our people, Yahshua, we think we have it all together. We think we have everything. And the question is, what can you say to a people that already believe that? What can you give to a person that believes they already have everything? Are you following me?
Yeah.
What can you say to a people that already believe, I don't need any help. I got all the help I need. What do you say? That is a question that has constantly been resounding in my ruach. Do I have the answer yet? No. Because I'm still seeking. Because we can say easily, well, you give them what they don't have. But if you think you already have everything, then if I present to you the smallest thing, you still think you already have it. Are you following me? This is where we are as a people. We feel like we already have it all. So what else is there to be introduced? That's the same thing that our ancestors and forefathers, the mindset they had. So when Yahushua came on the scene, to them, he was a stranger, and to them, he was a foreigner, an alien, and an enemy. Because people that believe they have everything don't know how to accept anything. Are you following me?
Yes.
Even if you say it's just a rock, just accept it. I don't need it because I already have one. But you don't have this one, but already have one. So it's a constant thing. And so the thing of it is, once again, is there some things that we as a people of Yahshua have to really start questioning and putting ourselves in the path of the Abba. Are you hearing me?
Yes.
To be, I'm not going to say humble, because if he humbles you, he about kill you.
Mm-hmm.
And it's the truth. It says you better fall on the rock instead of having the rock fall on you, and it calls you to be powered. So there's a lot of things that's going on that we as the people have got to get ourselves in line so that we can present to our people what they think they already have, but they actually don't. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Oh, baby, you all right. All right. Are you following me?
Yes.
That is important for us. And the reason it is important for us, because if we don't come to a place to understand this, then watch this. Those that are in Christianity, still bent over, will remain in Christianity bent over. Because they will see no reason to come here. Are you following me? It is important that we don't get caught up with the same mentality as those that got angry with Yahushua because he brought forth freedom and deliverance to this young lady. Young or old, we don't know, it's just said a daughter. But it's important that we not get stuck in a rut and feel like, well, there is nothing I can give to them. I will say this. Even if he's not giving us anything new, we still have what has been presented to us in the beginning. And if he hasn't changed that, then neither are we. Are you following?
Yes.
You just keep giving what he's giving you. And that is what we're supposed to do. Keep presenting what has already been presented.
Good.
Because that's what we're supposed to give. That's what we're supposed to give. That is so important for us as a people. And it is so. And it is so. Got my answer. All right. Let's look at verse 22. Let's stay in that same chapter. Yahushua travels through Perea in the direction of Jerusalem. Let's start at verse 22, and we're going to read all the way to verse 35.
Then Yahushua went through the towns and villages, teaching as he made his way to Yerushalayim. Someone asked him, Master, are only a few people going to be saved? He said to them, make every effort to enter through the narrow door, because many, I tell you, will try to enter and will not be able to. Once the owner of the house gets up and closes the door, he will stand outside knocking and pleading, Master, open the door for us. But he will answer, I don't know you or where you come from. Then you will say, we ate and drank with you, and you taught in our streets. Verse 27.
Mm-hmm.
But he will reply, I don't know you or where you come from. Away from me, all you evildoers. And it is so.
And it is so. Now, it's important. Now, he asked the question. Now, he tells us to strive to enter in at the narrow door. For many, I say to you, will seek to enter in and shall not be able. Excuse me. The reason many will not be able to enter in is because many are not willing to walk in that narrow path. Many are not willing. He says, strive to enter in at the narrow door. Now listen what he says. When once the head of the bayeth is risen up and has shut the door, and you begin to stand outside and to knock at the door, saying, Master, Master, open to us. And he shall answer and say to you, I know not where you come from. Now, many would say, well, that's going to be later. No, that's not. Are y'all following me?
God.
If we don't get this thing right now, and you don't enter in now, you won't. Are y'all following me? You won't. Once again, let's listen to what he says. You have the opportunity now because the door is still open and we still have access. But there's a time when that door is going to be closed and you won't have access. Many don't believe it, but many don't have access now because they're not willing to do what is necessary to get the access. That's a problem because many don't want to know, what do I have to do? Now, understand what I'm about to say because it's probably going to make a lot of folk mad. People think that going in at the narrow door is the women being quiet, having your head covered, and I don't have anything against wearing wraps, but I don't wear it because it's a part of my my submission to Abba Yahuwah. Are you following me? I wear it because this is what I like to do. Has nothing to do with me walking behind my husband. Are y'all following me?
Yes.
It has nothing to do with that. But going in at the narrow way is following in the Torah the way he gave it to the children of Yasharal, keeping the feast, keeping the Sabbath. Are y'all following me?
Yes.
Because without those things, how can people tell who you really are? Muslims wear their hair covered. They walk behind their husbands. So what is the difference? The difference is us keeping the feast, keeping the Sabbath, and ahabing our neighbor as we ahab ourselves. Meaning those, are you hearing me, that are still distant from this way of life. We don't shut them out and shun them because she was dogging out the pastor and don't supposed to win them when we are dogging them out. If a pastor does have lust, then you pray that the lust spirit be gone away from him and the Abba opens his ears to hear truth. If that is the case, but putting up names and talking about them is not going to bring them into truth. Making them feel like if I go into that, that's what I got to deal with. They're not going to come into the truth because they're going to look and say, no, I stay here and take my chances instead of going into that den of vipers. So we don't want to show that. What we are to show is a how. Right. Be patient. If it means backing away from them for a little bit. But we don't cut them off unless the Abba says cut them off. Right. And we don't try to walk with them every day either, because remember, their purpose and mission is to try to win you back to what they think is right. So while you're trying to be there, they're going to be bombarding you. No. Because I know what I'm walking is in truth. Are you hearing me? So it's important that we understand there's a right way and there's a wrong way. And that narrow way is showing forth the wisdom and the covenant power of Abba Yahuwah manifested through our lives. Through obedience. Are you following me? Yes. Through obedience, ahabing one another, respecting one another, but above all, following in the commands of the Abba. That is what we're supposed to do. And many have an issue with it because they don't want to follow the truth. They want to add any and everything to it. Customs. They want to bring customs and tie the customs along with it. They want to tie traditions along with it instead of just walking in it the way it's presented. Are you hearing me? Respecting your parents. Keeping the Sabbath day, Kadesh. These are things, not coveting what belongs to somebody else. Right. Those are the things that we are going to be judged by, how we keep the commandments. That is important. Are y'all following me? Because when we don't do that, we're going to find ourselves in trouble. And that's why he says strive to enter in. Because many people don't want to enter in. What they believe is narrow is their defining of truth and how it's supposed to be lived out. Not by what has been given to us. Are y'all following? Yes. Now listen what he says in verse 25 at the latter. He says, I know not where you come from. He says, I don't know where you come from. Then shall you begin to say, we ate and drank in your presence, and you have taught in our streets. Now listen at this. This is somebody that understands what was given. But watch this. When the opportunity was given and everything was set in motion for how it was to be done, they didn't do it. Tell people, y'all, come on, we got to get together. We got to do this stuff. We got to get things right. We got to do all of this. Are you hearing me? But yet, we continue to do everything else. So he says, I know not where you come from. I don't know where you come from. Watch this, because you were not with me. Are y'all following me?
Yes.
Now, listen to this. This is another footnote. This phrase or idiom means they were teaching with his authority, but what they forgot was that they were not teaching Torah at all and abrogating it and telling people it is no longer valid. So, in effect, they were abrogating his authority. Then Yahush told them he does not know them, for they are workers of sin. And we know what sin is. Those that live in Torah, disobedience, even to this Yom, in many churches, many what we would call camps, synagogues, and many circles or many congregations, because they won't walk in it. Just because you get a Hebrew name and get fringes or get seats doesn't make you a Hebrew. What makes us and defines us is our way of keeping and showing forth these things to the nations. Are you hearing me?
Yes.
You got many people that do certain things, and even you got people that say they're Hebrew, but yet they still hold on to Jesus Christ. And how are you still taking a Greek title and trying to connect it with Ibra?
Right.
It's like trying to mix water and oil. It doesn't work. It's not going to mix well. Are you following me? Oil is going to come to the top, and the water is going to stay where it is at the bottom, because it's not going to mix. Regardless of what you do, it's not going to mix. So it's important that we understand that it will not mix. Now listen what he says. Verse 27, but he shall say, I tell you, I know you not where you come from. Depart from me, all ye workers of sin. What is sin? Transgression of the instructions of the Abba's, transgression of the instructions of the Abba that he's given unto us as his people. So everybody cannot be a sinner, because everybody was not given the instructions. But we sin when we are disobedient to his instructions for our lives. Are y'all following me?
Yes.
That is what is so important for us to remember. So when he's talking about that narrow way, he's telling us, if you break the instructions of the doctrine, now you are walking in sin. Are you following me?
Yes.
That is what is important. Don't believe that the instructions, I don't want to use the word law, but the instructions of the Abba have been done away with. And that is only hinged upon two things: a hobbing your neighbor as you hob yourself, and a hobbing Yahuwah. These are the things that help us to keep all of them intact and walk them out in our lives. Are y'all following me?
Yes.
Because we're hobbing. If you don't, you won't. You will disregard it and walk away from it. Are y'all following me?
Yes.
So it's important that we not do that. All right, let us finish reading. Verse 28. Let's do 3.
There will be weeping and gnashing of teeth in that place, when you see Abraham, Isaac, and Yaakov, and all the prophets in the kingdom of Yahuwah, but yourself thrown out. They will come from the east and west, and from north and south, and recline at the table in the kingdom of Yahuwah. Note this: some are last who will be first, and some are first who will be last. And it is so.
And it is so. All right. There shall be weeping and gnashing of teeth, where you shall see Abraham and Isaac and Jacob and all the prophets in the kingdom of power, and you yourselves will be thrust out. Now, can you imagine? I don't even want to set my mind to imagine that at all. You get there and finally be able to look and see what they look like, and then you got to go. This is small, but it's just like going to a party that a VIP party. Everybody you know that's of importance is going to be there. People that you really want to meet. and you get there, and then they tell you, okay, and you see me like, wow, I can't wait to get over there. Then they come arrest you and tell you, you got to go. You got to go. That's horrible. But this is what he said, you're going to be thrust out. Now you have to understand, to thrust something out means that they're going to be done like this. Really. Thrust doesn't mean we're going to walk you out nicely. Thrust means you're going to be forced out. Thank you. You're going to be forced out. People don't want to view it like that, but you are. Now listen what he says. And they shall come from the east and from the west and from the north and from the south and shall sit down in the kingdom of power. Now, this is once again where a lot of our people have erred because they think he's talking about every other nation except us. We have been thrust to all these four extremities. So we are coming to the dinner table. No other nation. They hear me. And behold, there are last which shall be first, and there are first which shall be last. Now you got to understand once again, Yasharal was considered to be first. Or no, Yehuda was considered to be first, and Yasharal was considered to be last. But now, because we are coming, we will be first, and the first shall be last, which will be Yehuda. Are you hearing me? Yeah. Important for us to understand that. Not talking about anybody else. Now, watch what it said. And there are last which shall be first. He didn't say all. And there are first which shall be last. The same Yom there came certain of the Pharisees, saying to him, get away from here and depart hence, for Herodus wants to kill you. You know why he wanted to kill him, right? Because of them. Because of them going spreading lies and going talking a whole lot of stuff. Why do you think a lot of laws and a lot of things are being changed concerning us as a people? You think they're getting this from different people? They're getting it from our own people. If you want to hurt them, cut off their link and their means of reaching people. Do you think they're getting that from other people? They're getting that from our people. Are you following me? Yeah. You want to stop them? Cut this. You want to do this? Cut that. Our people are doing that. That's our people doing it. We don't need other people to do what our people are doing because they do it well. This is why things are happening and coming about. Are y'all hearing me? Yeah. He said, get out of there because they want to kill you. Why? Because they were coming telling him because of what others had gone and done to stir up trouble. Because they didn't like what they were hearing. Let me tell you something. When people don't like what you hear, what you are saying to them, they will go on to other people. Don't listen to them because they are cult. Now, some people are now, truthfully. Some people do have cult ways and practices, but then there are those. Don't go listen to them because they all misconstrued. They all jacked up, and the only thing they're telling you is true. Live by the instructions he's given. Don't add and don't take away. Are you following? Yeah. It's very important for us to understand. Now, all right, let's look. Let's read verse 32. 32 and 33.
32 and 33. And he said unto them, go ye and tell that fox, behold, I cast out devils, and I do curse, and I do I cast out devils, and I do cures today and tomorrow, and the third day, and I shall be perfected. Nevertheless, I must walk today and tomorrow, and the day following, for it cannot be that a prophet perish out of Jerusalem. And it is so.
And it is so. Now he's citing from Ezekiel 13 and 14. That fox, a lying, deceiving man. The Abraham's writing tell us that this designation is not to show that Herod was clever, but to show his evil, debased nature as a destroyer. He said, now go tell that fox. Behold, I cast out demons, and I perform healings to Yom, and tomorrow, and on the third Yom, my work shall be completed. Now he basically let them know he ain't doing nothing that I don't already know about. Are you hearing me? Yeah. He ain't doing nothing. He said, nevertheless, now we see his tone change. Nevertheless, I must walk to Yom, and tomorrow, and the Yom following. For it cannot be that a prophet perishes out of Jerusalem, perishes out of. So he wasn't going to perish. In other words, he didn't have the authority to kill him. It wasn't his time, so he had to go and do what he needed to do. All right, 34 and 35. Yes.
Luke chapter 13, verse 34 and 35. Jerusalem, Jerusalem, killing the prophets and stoning those who are sent to her. How often I wish to gather your children together the way a hen gathers her chickens under her wings, but you would not. See, your house is left to you laid waste. And truly I say to you, you shall by no means see me until the time comes when you say, Baruch is he who is coming in the name of Yahuwah.
Mm-hmm.
And it is so.
And it is so. Now listen what he's saying to them as the people of Yasharal. He said, "Oh, Jerusalem, Jerusalem, which killed the prophets and stoned them that are sent to you." Kill the prophets and stone them that are sent to you. Let me tell you something. People may not be physically picking up stones today, but their words are just like stones. I was looking at a post the other and and people like to stir up trouble. And people that's why I don't even get in them debates, and I don't even get on there with people when they constantly asking foolish questions. These people calling themselves prophets and apostles and all this, and people always want to question it. And you have people on there trying to answer it. Back in the Yom of the prophets of old, they didn't go and defend themselves. They didn't even go and debate with people. They just said whatever the Yahweh had to say and kept it going. Mm-hmm. And whatever was to be done was to be done. We tend to constantly look over in Christianity, over there in their grass, and then try to take that same view, eyes view, and apply it to this way of life, living as Ibram, which is wrong. Because now you're trying to define a person that calls themselves, not because they call themselves, but the Abba called them a prophet, apostle. Are you hearing me? Mm-hmm. An evangelist. Now you're looking over in Christianity and saying, but that's what they do. Then that's not what they're called. You still trying to do that because, let's put it this way, and don't get mad at me, but I'm just going to state the facts. Every single woman ain't a gossiper. But if we took that mindset, then we would say every single woman that has 2 or 3 children is messy. Are y'all following me?
Yes.
We would say every single man is running after every single woman or married woman or whoever would be willing to give him a chance. We know that's not true though. Are you following me? Every married man, well, if he ain't content, he trying to have 2 or 3 wives. Are y'all following me?
Uh-huh.
It is the mindset. If we continue to perpetuate certain mindsets, then we might as well continue across the board with it. Mm-hmm. The bottom line is understanding where we stand and how we're supposed to stand. That's so important for us as a people. Once again, it is important that we understand, do not take everybody and categorize them or put them in the same category. So you ask this question, and then you come back and you're not asking it because you really want to know. You're asking it to stir up debates and to then cause people to question those of us that operate in the prophetic. If the Abba is not speaking, then there is nothing to say. Are you hearing me?
Uh-huh.
And you must remember what he has already said is still in full force and still active. So if anybody's running their mouths and saying that he's saying this and saying that, you better question them, because let's look at the description and let's look at the characteristics of the prophets of old. If they went into a city, that city was afraid, and they would ask them, is it for shalom or judgment? Do we need to get the offerings together? What do we need to do? Because they knew there was only certain times that they would go in. We can't let Christianity take and make every gift that the Abba has given a bad gift.
Right.
Or make it that everybody that says this is what the Abba has called them to is now one of those prophets or one of those people. You can't do that. Because now basically what you're saying is that the Abba has no true people. And you know them by the fruit. And understand something. We understand if he's not saying it, then we don't. And we ain't trying to make up anything. And we ain't trying to create something to say. If he is not saying it, then we're not. We continue as he has already pushed us forward, continue to promote what he has already said to promote. And that is for us as a people and those that are not living right to repent and come on home. We continue with that momentum. We continue with that. Repent and turn from your wicked ways and find yourself following in the instructions of the Abba through his son, Yahushua Mashiach. That is what we continue to do. We don't add anything else, because you add, you're going to be in trouble. You're going to be in danger, because now you're trying to basically set the tone because you're trying to razzle dazzle people. You better get out of that mindset. Razzle dazzling people will get you killed and get you in trouble with the Abba. It's important we understand that. If he's not saying it, then don't you say it. Now listen what he said. And stone them that are sent to you. How often would I have gathered your children together as a hen gather her chicks under her wings, and you would not? Now you have to understand he's telling them that. So who do you think the children's children are? It's us. He said, I would have gathered your children together. But there was no room because they did not what? Give him the space to do so. Are y'all following me?
Yeah.
Now look at verse 35. Behold, your bed is left to you desolate. And verily I say to you, you shall not see me until the time comes when you shall say, Baruch is he that comes in the name of Yahuwah. Are you hearing me?
Yes.
That's important for us to understand. Why is it important for us to understand? It's important for us to understand because he said we ain't gonna see it until that statement and that proclamation is made. Are y'all following me?
Yeah.
Very important for us to understand. It is important for us to once again look at the life of Yahush during the times of the feast and in between the times of the feast. What was he doing? In those 33 years that he walked the face of the earth, it is important that we understand his assignment and that we can follow it. And in following it, we have to be beguiled and not be forced out of what he's given unto us. Maybe, I know my mom would say it, and I've even heard it say to young men, because I've said it to my sons at a point. And my mother said to me, especially when you're out there and you're thinking you're grown, I'm ready for this. And mom said, you're not ready for that kind of relationship. Oh, yeah, I am ready for that kind of relationship. Ready for that. Because you have not experienced it, and you're only going off of what you are going steady. And I was dating this guy who was in the military, and we was talking about going steady. When you're talking about going steady, that means you remove everybody else out your life, and and it's just you and that person, because now your relationship has evolved, because now it's only about you and that individual. And she said, you don't know anything about that. And she said, you're not ready to go steady. Because you're not ready to do that. And she was right. She was right, because that wasn't even the person I ended up with. Are you following me? Same thing I told a couple of my sons. You're not ready for that. Don't venture off into that, because you're not ready. It's important that you understand that if someone's giving you solid information and solid instructions, don't fight against it. If you didn't even give it a try, you don't even know if it'll work or not, or fail, because you never gave it a try. So it's important. I'm not talking about understanding. I want to make sure I bring clarity to this. I'm not talking about people introducing to you a new book. Well, you need to read this because these are the lost books. If it's lost, let it stay lost. Are y'all following me? If it's lost, let it stay lost. Because if it needs to find its way into your life, do you not know that the Yahweh would have already allowed it to be found? If it's lost, let it stay lost. It's amazing. We didn't know truth until he put us in the path of truth. But here's somebody come tell you it's a lost book and you reading it and all this stuff in there and you have not even established yourself. Are you following me? In the writings enough. When we grab these things because we feel like if we got this kind of knowledge on top of that, next thing you know, now you're not even walking in the truth you first started with. He told the Galatians, oh, foolish Galatians, who have bewitched you to start this thing in the Ruach and finish it up in the flesh. See, everybody thought that they were talking about the instructions of the Abba, which they call the law. But he was talking about how can you start in the instructions of the Abba and then walk away from that what is worldly. You started running well, believing in the Mashiach. And then we turn around, many of you, and say, well, he's not real. Really? Where did you get that from? Oh, from a lost book or from an interpretation of somebody who is not skilled in the writings. And because based upon their evidence and their proof, now you believed it. And now you've lost your first estate and your first aha for the instruction that he's given. Now you're out there. Now watch this. You don't know what to believe or who to believe. So now you're like what? You're tossed to and fro with every wind of doctrine. You can't settle yourself because of that one thing. And this is why I suggest, before you pick up anything else that's calling itself new, old, lost, get to know what's in the writings first. Get to know and get locked down in that. And that way, if you do come across something that is false, you got something to back it up and to support you and keep you from falling for all this that is not right. Are y'all following? I know it's hard because a lot of people just like to get a whole lot of information and read it. But all information is not good information. Are y'all following me? It's very important to understand that. Because next thing you know, you'll be somewhere out here calling yourself something else, and you'll be doing something else. And when you look back, you'll be like, where and how did I stray from what was the foundation of my belief? Important for us to understand that. And it is so. And it is so. And it is so. I pray thus far that you have enjoyed spending this time with us as I have enjoyed myself, as I always do, in a time of Shabbat, in a time of celebration and commemoration of a time of rest, a time that we cease from all our labor and we labor in the word to seek him and to know that what he has said unto you, we're praying with you and we're praying for you, that the Abba will continue to open your eyes to his truth and keep you separated. That's another thing. Being set apart means that we don't do like everybody else does. We don't grab everything because it's presented to us. We don't do that. We hold on and we seek and hold to that what helps us to remain separate. And so I want to encourage you, keep your head up, keep your shoulders square, and keep your heart and your feet in and upon the Torah, because you can't go wrong when you keep him and his instructions at the center of your life. I am Aliyah Yasharal, and I am the Mora of Messengers of Yahuwah's Kingdom, a great belief congregation located in South Carolina. I want you to remember here at Messengers of Yahuwah's Kingdom, a great belief congregation, this is the place where
the Torah does the body excellent.
Until next time, may Abba Yahuwah Baruch Atah and keep you in his shalom until then. Also, I want you to remember that you've been touched by Champion TV, a place where the champions reside. And it is so.
And it is so.
And it is so.
This is Champion TV. This is Carolina TV. This is Carolina TV.